ask you something, like for real. You know that feeling that you get in the pit of your stomach, like when you know you're supposed to be doing something, you know you're supposed to be doing it, and you keep on not doing it? And it's not because you don't want to, or because you're lazy, or because you don't have any ideas, but because it just feels scary. You don't even know why or how to explain it. You can feel like there's another version of you on the other side of it, but your body's like, girl, no. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like fear. Sometimes it feels like I just need to think about this a little bit more, or like I'm gonna do it when I have time. I'm gonna do it when I'm more prepared, or I just need to fix this one little tiny other thing and then it'll finally be ready. You can almost trick yourself into thinking that you're being wise. You can trick yourself into thinking you're being responsible. You can even trick yourself into thinking that you're being patient. But if we're being honest, you're really just stuck. And what you're stuck in is fear. The reason I'm talking about this is because this is literally what I've been dealing with lately. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Lexi, and I've spent years working in branding and creative strategy, helping businesses clarify who they are, what they stand for, how they show up, and how they grow. What I've learned is brands don't grow because they just got lucky. Well, sometimes they do, but typically brands grow because they get clear. We need the same thing personally. My goal is to take the same professional strategy and principles I've used in branding and apply it to your personal glow up. Because the truth is, the habits, the routines, the new year, new me stuff, it doesn't stick when you don't know who you're becoming. I want to talk about the thing that blocks that becoming more than anything: fear. Fear doesn't always feel like panic. Sometimes fear looks like waiting. Sometimes it looks like over planning. Sometimes, for me, it looks like perfectionism. Sometimes fear looks like I'm going to start next week. Sometimes it looks like starting and stopping and starting and stopping. And fear is sneaky because it can look so productive. You're watching all these videos, you're doing all the research, you're taking notes, you're making lists, you're saving drafts, you're rewriting the same thing over and over and over again. But nothing is moving. And that's how fear keeps you loyal to an old version of yourself that you've probably already outgrown. You're not even the same person you were last year. So why are you still making decisions based on who you used to be? When you look at certain brands, certain companies, you're like, yeah, they were probably always going to make it, right? Like some companies just feel like they were destined to be great. They feel like they were always going to be something big. But then you look at other companies and you're like, wow, we don't even talk about them anymore. And what's crazy is sometimes they have the same opportunities. Sometimes they have the same resources. One decision, one moment, one shift is what separated the brand that became a household name from the brand that became a nostalgic childhood memory. Fear can do the same thing to your life. Fear can decide if you become who you were meant to be or if you become a what if. This made me think about a specific company, Netflix. Now, Netflix is Netflix. It's global, it's culture, it's everybody's default, right? But Netflix wasn't always that. In the 90s, Netflix was literally a DVD by mail company. Like you go online, you pick a movie and they would mail you a disc and you mail it back once you're done watching it. And at the time, this was innovative. You didn't have to drive to Blockbuster. You didn't have to hope the movie that you wanted was still on the shelf. So Netflix was actually killing it. I mean, they're still killing it today, but they were building something that was new and it was working. But somebody in that company was paying attention. They were watching what was happening with technology. They were watching the internet evolve. They were watching people starting to want something different. And they realized something. If we stay where we are because we're comfortable, we might wake up one day and nobody needs us anymore. And that's a hard realization because when something is working, the temptation is to say, why change it? It's literally what fear says. Why risk it? Why disrupt it? Why not stay here a little bit longer? But they chose to invest in streaming. Now, streaming wasn't some guaranteed win back then. People weren't asking for streaming. Technology wasn't perfect, internet speeds were slow, it was expensive, it was risky, and it was certainly uncertain. And in the beginning, it hurt them. So many customers were complaining, people were confused, and their stock even dropped. Like, imagine making a decision you believe in and everybody starts doubting you. This is literally what it feels like when you're trying to evolve. You start changing and people look at you like, what are you doing? You start moving differently and people question it. Even you question it. But Netflix, they kept going because they understood something. Comfort can feel like safety, but comfort can also be a huge trap. At the same time, Blockbuster, if you guys remember that, Blockbuster was the giant. It was the default. Blockbuster was everywhere. I honestly remember like going to Blockbuster every Friday with my family and picking out movies. It was childhood, right? I didn't even know what Netflix was at the time, nor did I really understand it, but I also was a child. But I'm sure my family and my parents didn't understand Netflix either. We knew Blockbuster though, right? It was a household name. Blockbuster had chances to shift too, but they didn't. They stayed with what they knew, what felt proven, and what felt safe. And now Netflix is the household name, and Blockbuster is just a distant memory. That's not just business, that is a life lesson. And I need you to hear this part because this is the whole point of this video. Fear will convince you to protect what's familiar, even when what's familiar is keeping you small. Fear will convince you that staying the same is peace, when really it's just avoidance. And I'm not saying every pause is fear. I'm not saying that every delay is wrong, but a lot of us know the difference because you can literally feel it in your body. I struggle with this too, very often. Sometimes I genuinely don't know, is this God protecting me? Like, is this a warning or is this insecurity, right? Because sometimes fear and protection can sound similar when you're not tuned into the right wavelength. Both can say don't. Both can say wait. Both can feel like you're supposed to be pausing, right? So how do you tell the difference? Here's what I've learned in my own life. God's protection brings clarity. Even if it's disappointing, you can feel the clarity. Now, fear, on the other hand, brings confusion. Fear has you spinning. Fear has you rewriting the same decision 30 times and feeling insecure. Fear has you asking everybody and their mama for their opinion on something that you already know what to do on. Fear has you making progress and then backing up and then starting the cycle all over again. Protection feels firm and fear feels totally frantic. Protection feels like peace. Fear feels like that stomach dropping dreadful feeling and then you go numb and avoid it. And once I realized that, I started using a filter. So if you're someone who struggles to know, is this fear or is this wisdom? I want to give you something. This is what I call the fear filter. And I want you to write these down and don't rush through them. Like, actually sit with them. So, question number 1. What am I afraid will happen if I actually just try? Now, this one, people answer too quickly because the surface answer is, I'm just afraid I'll fail. But let's go deeper. What does failure mean to you? Does it mean you'll look stupid? Does it mean people will judge you? Does it mean you'll confirm what you secretly believe about yourself? Does it mean you'll waste time? Does it mean you'll waste money? Does it mean you'll be disappointed again? Because most of the time, the fear that you're feeling, it isn't about the thing. The fear is about what it would mean, right? So don't just say, I'm afraid I'll fail. Ask, what story am I telling myself will happen if I fail? What label am I afraid of earning? Because once you can name that, you can challenge it. And then you can ask yourself, okay, if that happens, will I survive? And most of the time, the answer is yes. You will survive embarrassment. You will survive a bad video. You will survive somebody not liking you. But you might not survive never becoming who you were meant to be. And that leads me to question number 2. What will definitely happen if I don't try? Now, this one is sobering because if you don't start the channel, you'll stay stuck with the idea. If you don't apply for the job, you'll stay in the same position. If you don't start to work out, you'll stay in the same body. If you don't leave what's draining you, then you'll stay drained. The key word is definitely, because fear loves to focus on what might happen if you try, but wisdom focuses on what will definitely happen if you don't. And I want you to feel that, because this is where people start waking up. Some of us are more scared of failing than we are of staying stuck. And that is totally backwards. So question number 3, which version of me does fear keep me loyal to? That's a real question, right? Because fear will keep you loyal to a version that plays small, a version of you that people understand, a version of you that doesn't threaten anybody, a version that doesn't risk disappointment. Fear keeps you loyal to your old brand, even when the new you is knocking on the door. So ask yourself, who am I protecting by not changing? Who benefits when I stay the same? And sometimes the answer is other people. Sometimes the answer is your own comfort. But either way, it's not your calling. And honestly, this whole thing makes me think about Peter, because you know the story, Peter walking on water, right? He's in the boat, there's a storm, everything's chaotic, and Jesus calls out to him. And Peter steps out while it's all still very much terrifying. And I know we love to act like faith is this confident thing, but no. Faith is moving while you're still scared. The boat is familiar. The boat is routine. That boat was what you can explain. Now, stepping on the water, that's where the risk is, the uncertainty. That is I don't know if this is going to work. But the miracle wasn't on the boat. Peter didn't get proof first. He got out first, and he starts walking. And yeah, he gets afraid, and yes, he starts sinking. Even that is a lesson, because even when he started to sink, Jesus didn't say, see, you should have never tried. He reached out for him. And that's what I need you to understand about yourself and your life and this rebrand journey that you're on. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing. And you don't have to have it perfect. You just have to take a step. Today, I was watching one of my favorite ministers, Stephanie Ike. She's my favorite, and I can't even pronounce her name. I'm sorry, girl. And she was talking about fear and faith. And I had this like visual metaphor pop into my head where she was talking about how we have to, like Amos 3:3, how can two walk together if they don't agree? And it made me think about, like, if we're walking with Jesus, right? We need to be walking with him, right? Because she was saying that if we're not walking at the same pace as him, then, you know, eventually we're on different paths. We start walking in different paths. But the way I was picturing in my head was, we need to be walking side by side with Jesus so that we can hear the instruction that he has for us, right? If we are too far ahead and we start walking past him, now it's all about us. He's nowhere to be found. We're making our own decisions, our own moves, and we've just gone ahead of whatever his instructions were. While at the same time, if we're moving too slow because we're afraid, because we're in fear, we still can't hear what he's saying, right? He's too far away. I feel like this makes me think about Peter in the boat too, right? Like, we can't hear what Jesus is saying because he's all the way down there. Maybe we can see him, but we can only see him a little bit. This is when we feel like our faith is failing or we're far from God. It's not because God ran ahead of us. It's because each step was another thing that we're supposed to be doing. And because we're afraid, we stood still. when we were supposed to be taking intentional steps with God, right? If that makes any sense. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. For me, fear has looked like sitting on ideas, waiting for the perfect moment, telling myself I'll get to it later. But I realized something. If God keeps placing something on your heart and you keep holding on to it, that's not patience. That's hoarding. And I don't want to hoard my purpose. Fear is not just an emotion. Fear is a gate. It is the line between you and your dream life, between you and your purpose, you and the version of you that you keep dreaming about every night. Then fear is the reason some people become Netflix and some people become Blockbuster. Fear is the reason you either evolve or you become a memory of yourself. I'm not saying all this to be dramatic or preachy. I'm saying it because I've lived it. I've watched myself sit on things that I was called to do. I watched myself overthink, watch myself rewrite the same plan 100 times while I see other people out here impacting people, not because they were more talented, but because they were moving. And fear will have you making revisions while life just passes you by, and we don't want that. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you want to rebrand your life this year, if you want to be your own dream girl, if you want the habits, the routines, the glow ups, the goals, we can talk about all of that. But it's not going to matter if fear is running your decisions. Do you want to look up and realize another year passed you by and you're still just getting ready? Do you want to still be talking about the same dream in December? Or do you want to become the kind of woman who moves even if her voice is shaky, even if it's messy, even if she's still learning? Because that woman, she gets stuff done. She doesn't let fear be the reason that she stays stuck. Don't let fear be the reason that you stay small. Don't let fear be the reason that you never touch what was meant for you. There is room for you. There is room for all of us, but you have to step. And if you don't know where to start with those 3 questions from earlier. If you felt this, I want you to comment the word step and let me know what you're stepping into this year, even if you're scared. I'll see you in the next one.